Hello and welcome to England Cricket on 99.94 Cricket every day. I'm Daniel Norcross from Tasman Special, from BT Sport, from Wisden Cricket Monthly, from a renowned but never listened to podcast Zero Ducks Given with Toby Tarrant and Stephen Finn. And also, as we said, from the Surrey live stream you heard from me yesterday as Surrey made their way to the top of the tree. They are county champions for a 21st time, 14 times since the Second World War. I'll tell you how they do it.
All the odds.
By nurturing young talent, Rory Dollard, the puff pastry hangman who is alongside me. That's how they do it. The likes of Tom Laws, the Curran brothers, just talent that oozes out of Surrey's academy, and it was an absolute delight to watch.
Young from Vauxhall.
Well, yes, but he didn't play the biggest part, did he? I mean, you'd have to say it's the likes of, I suppose, Jordan Clark. He was quite important, and he wasn't really from Vauxhall either.
Cumbrian lad.
Anyway, Rory Dollard has leapt in, the chief cricket writer of the Press Association, and he joins me every day, my prematurely aged homunculus friend. It's lovely to see you. And it's also slightly concerning that you've described me as a sweary stepdad to the nation.
We're only the nation's cricket, in fairness. I don't think the wider public want you as their sweary stepdad. Just the cricket lovers amongst us.
Well, it's a role I'm very happy to play. Now, sod off. No, obviously not. Today, we are going to be looking, yes, folks, gird your loins. It doesn't sound like fun, but it is actually very important. The men's high performance review. Sir Andrew Strauss has been, he's looked at stuff, he's crunched numbers, and he's found ways of just keeping the culture war going. So Twitter will be ablaze with infuriated fans who are down one side or the other of an artificially created divide. England Cricket on 99.94 is your new home for English cricket content, and we will be dropping into your podcast feed and on YouTube or on the 99.94 app 3 times every week. Thanks for joining Cricket's Conversation. Now, Rory, I've given it the really big sell there, but ordinarily, I've got to say, it's things like this, as a dilettante broadcaster who's basically winging it through life and thoroughly enjoying watching cricket before heading off to the pub and nattering about cricket with people who love cricket. It's at times like this when my eyes glaze over, my knees become arthritic, I feel the chill wind in my bones because men's high performance review, it's 4 words when put together that fill me with enervation. But you have convinced me that there is stuff in here that not only do we need to talk about, but actually might be quite fun to talk about. So go for it. Do your best. Okay. Explain what it is.
Well, as you say, it is a bit wordy and a bit in depth and what have you. And in many ways, it's like the budget, isn't it, that we've just had from our new Chancellor of the Exchequer here in England. It's a load of very dull words.
Sorry. I have to stop you there, Rory, because it's not a budget in exactly the same way as it's a military operation, not a war in the Ukraine. It's not a budget. It's an incredibly wide-ranging fiscal statement that will not come under any scrutiny. But yes, I'm sorry I interrupted you. Continue.
But it's a lot of very intense words and notions and concepts presented in quite a dry way that are actually quite important. And in the budget's case, it transfers wealth and power to a very small percentage of the population. Whether you think that's what Andrew Strauss's high performance review does in county cricket is up to you. But there are people who do believe that. Primarily, there are 17 recommendations, some of which we can talk about later, but only 2 of them require a vote of the first class counties. And it's about a restructure, another restructure, because we do restructure domestic cricket on an annual basis, actually, don't we, at the moment?
Yes, I'd say, yep.
But this is supposed to be one that sticks. And the headline is less of it. So less first-class cricket, less T20 cricket, less days for the members who keep some of the counties alive. So less cricket, but it's presented as all in the prism of improving standards, that feed up to the very, very highest level, and that means your England men's cricket team in this case. So part of the reasoning for this is they think that players play too much. They don't necessarily train enough on skills. They don't review and analyse as much as they could. They're on the treadmill from one to the next. And there is in English cricket potentially a feeling that, if you have a bad day, you get out, you go for a few. There's always another. There's always another. And then there's another one after that. And I personally don't think, from a sporting point of view, the idea of thinning the schedule out a bit is an awfully bad one. England is a bit of an outlier in terms of how much sort of days of active cricket its players are supposed to go through. But as you said, in terms of the culture war, there's plenty of soldiers on each side. And there are people at various counties or just county supporters in general who feel that it's the thin end of the wedge and that it's a way to marginalise, to drain talent potentially. Because one of Andrew Strauss and his panel's big ideas is to have a 6-team top division, 5 home, 5 away games, and, call it that best v best. And best v best means let's see your best young players, Leicestershire, Derbyshire, Glamorgan, whoever it might be, and we'll have them up in that top division, please, but we don't necessarily want you.
Yes, I mean, I want to start right at the beginning with what constitutes playing too much cricket. And I'm not going to do an in my day type thing, but I spent a fair bit of time with cricketers who do exactly that. I was at an event the other day with 2 former England players who are absolutely staggered by how little cricket people actually play now, especially England cricketers. This last round of county championship matches, for example, featured only 2 of England's test team, Ollie Pope and Ben Folkes, both playing for Surrey, highly incentivised because Surrey were going for the title. In fairness, Ben Folkes played 9 county championship matches, Ollie Pope played 8. They are outliers. Jack Leach, who had barely bowled a ball in the Test series, hardly bowled a ball at Old Trafford. He didn't play against Somerset. Alex Lees didn't play for Durham. Zach Crawley, with his side in trouble, he didn't go and play for Kent. Joe Root didn't play for Yorkshire. Ben Stokes didn't play. The list goes on until you reach the end of the England squad, basically. Now, I don't want to be a kind of back in my day kind of old bore, but I was doing an event the other day with 2 former England cricketers who were very, very highly prominent players, hugely successful, one of England's finest fast bowlers, one of England's finest ever captains. And they were, both of them, pretty flabbergasted at how little cricket actually is played by England contracted players particularly. And this was underscored, I thought, in the last round of county championship matches, where only 2 of England's squad actually played. Ben Folkes and Ollie Pope, who were obviously incentivised by the prospect of a county championship. In fairness, Ben Folkes played 9 county championship matches this summer out of 14. Ollie Pope played 8, as well as them playing, 7 test matches in the case of Ollie Pope, I think 6 in the case of Ben Folkes. And so that's what, you're getting to 15, 16 first-class matches for those guys. Nobody else in the England setup played. Jack Leach didn't play. Zach Crawley didn't play. Alex Lees didn't play. I mean, Lees and Crawley have barely been able to get a run this summer. They didn't bother to go to their counties and try and find some form. Joe Root didn't play. Slightly more understandable, perhaps. We knew that Anderson and Broad weren't going to play. Ben Stokes didn't play. They're hardly playing any cricket at all, aren't they? And if you go back to, say, 1990, say when Durham arrived and there are 18 counties, 22 3-day games, that's 66 days. 17 John Player League games, that's 83 days. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 Benson Hedges Cup matches if you got through to the final. 5 Gillette Cup matches if you got through to the final there. So that's another 11 on top of that. Makes 94 days before you've even got to warm-ups, games against the counties. Let's say you're looking at 100 days there. Well, this proposal makes for 10 4-day games, bearing in mind that some of those 4-day games we finished inside 3 days. That's 40. They'll play 10 T20 matches, that's 50, and they might play as few as 2 or 3 Royal London games, 53. Even if they were playing in the 100, that gets you to 61 if you played every single day. That is about 3/5 of the workload of back in the day in the 1990s. Now,
Yeah, but
if that might have been too much in 1990, but are we getting to 61 days in summer? And summer starts in April and ends in September. That's like nearly 6 months. And they're basically going to work for 1 out of 3 days. That's insane, isn't it?
well, they're going to play for 1 out of 3 days.
Yes,
That
fair
doesn't mean
enough,
they're not
yes.
working, and I think that's the
No,
point.
that's fair.
I think I think it sounds. Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, I'm looking at that schedule that you've read out from the past and thinking, yeah, like great, but they used to go down the mines and before bowling 10 overs as well, so we don't really want much of that to return. I think if we look at the idea that England often turn up with lots of medium pace bowlers who know how to get through a good long spell with their packed lunch on their back, we do need a bit more intensity. And if on a first class level, I think this proposal is really not too bad, because the idea is that it might just persuade people to bend their backs, bowl a bit faster, because then they have got next week off, to trust in other skills that aren't just about managing their body through the season. Now, I think where the debate, the real fulcrum of the debate might come, is in the T20 situation. And that is, can they afford to strip back the amount of games that counties get for T20s? And perhaps we can, there's a lot to be said on that. So I wonder if we need to push that into the next section. But I think 10 first-class matches compared to what you get around the world might be about right, with a little bit of scope for red ball shenanigans in between when the 100's going on. But the battleground might be T20.
Well, we will return to that very shortly. You are listening to Cricket's Conversation on 99.94. Whatever your team, we have the show for you on podcast, YouTube, or on the 99.94 app. We have India, England, South Africa, West Indies, and now Sri Lanka covered. If you want to find us, the best way is to follow us on social media at 9994DM by downloading the 9994 app, or Google 99.94 on podcasts. We speak the language of cricket. Now, Rory, I'm going to come straight back to that, because there is a very significant issue of the finances of counties. It strikes me that if they play 5 4-day matches at home, that's it, 20 days of county championship cricket, 5 days of T20 blast, and what they might get 4 or 5 days of Royal London. That would mean that a Surrey fan, I'm going to give you a Surrey fan at one end of the spectrum, I'm going to give you a Leicestershire fan at the other end of the spectrum. They're getting their, 30 days of seeing their county at their county ground out of a season that lasts about 171 days. They're currently paying 220, 230 quid for an oval season ticket. You would have to go to pretty much every available day, especially bearing in mind, as I said, that some of these games aren't going to last 4 days in the county championship. If you go away on holiday and you miss a county championship game, woe betide you. The counties themselves, 5 T20s at home instead of, 7 at the moment? 8? 7 or 8?
7.
That is a significant attack on your revenue. Now, if you're Surrey, you can absorb that because you've got conference facilities, you've got all sorts of other things that make the club and the ground viable. If you're Leicestershire and Derbyshire, or you're Somerset, quite frankly, which has got a really big following and a really good membership, are they really going to want to pay that amount of money? That it's going to cost less, surely, membership. That's going to bring less money into the coffers. That means that the ECB are going to have to find more money if they want to keep these counties going.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that actually slicing out that much cricket from the season makes the game more commercially viable. I doubt it. The suggestion is that by having slightly less cricket, it's going to make the quality of what you watch that much better. And I'm still not 100% convinced about that, because you're right. I think if you do the treadmill, if you do 22 3-day games, if there's always another opportunity around the corner, that's fine. But we were at something like a reasonable compromise on the number of games at 14. It's just, if you put 7 of them in a 7-week period, then obviously a fast bowler
Yeah.
unit's got to be rotated, or they've got to compromise on how hard they go.
So, one thing that I am particularly keen on, because if you look at, I mean, the Test Championship is a really good example. It defies sporting logic. It says you can have this many points for a win against Bangladesh, or you can have this many points for a win against Australia. The thing's uneven. And the problem with a 14-match first-class season at the moment is that they're not doing home and away against everyone. And on a sporting level, that's basically garbage. It's a bad idea.
It's how the county championship operated for about 100 years of its existence.
Yeah, and it's just not very good, is it? It's not a very good idea to say you can win the championship, but it's not even. Having a symmetrical fixture list isn't a massively controversial idea in itself. So I think it is primarily commercial and for people who are invested in their county, it's a personal problem. I don't think it's a sporting problem. I think the sporting logic of the calendar that they've suggested is not so bad. And specifically, it drags the first class game out of the early start of the season and the back end of it. And it makes it a bit more evenly spread through the course of the season, which is a problem we had this year of England players vying to get into the Test team without any red ball experience under their belts in recent weeks. So there is something good about it on that level, I think. Whether they can persuade enough people, because they need 12 votes out of 18 counties, and already we've seen Sussex don't seem keen, Essex don't seem keen, Lancashire putting it to a members' vote. Are members going to vote for less cricket, but less bang for their buck? Who knows? There is a good bit of scepticism doing the rounds already, and actually, I think Gareth Batty and Rory Burns as coach and captain at Surrey, it was a notable intervention that they chose their celebratory moment of triumph in the county championship to say we don't fancy this idea. So there's an argument to be had and to be won and lost here, and it's not really obvious which way it goes, other than to say bending a little bit on the T20 might be the compromise that the landing spot that they can meet on.
Mm. Yes. I mean, I think that's going to be the most contentious part, isn't it? Because actually, Sussex isn't going to mind too dreadfully if there are 8 days less county cricket in terms of county championship being played, but they will really feel the pinch from 2 fewer T20 blast fixtures. I mean, there's just a couple of other things to throw into the mix before we move into our third segment to look at the other recommendations. Let's be really clear about what this restructure is. It's that the top 6 teams in next year's First Division will form the First Division for 2024. The next 12 teams will then be seeded into 2 groups of 6, and the winners of each of those groups will play off against each other to get promotion into the First Division, and the bottom side gets relegated. So one side will get to play 11 games, or 2 sides get to play 11 games, the winners of the 2 groups.
Yeah.
And the problem is in part caused by the fact that we have a stupid number of counties, namely 18. If we had 21, then you might be able to have 3 groups of 7, and then you would have 12 games, and that might be a compromise that people would go with. But we don't have that, so that's where we're at. But can I just spare a thought for all the people that work in and around cricket? Because cricket needs to maintain its own infrastructure. It's not just about the players at the top of that pyramid turning out and playing Test cricket for England, because that's essentially what this men's high performance review is about.
Yeah.
To support all of those things, you actually need to have people who maintain the ground, who work at the ground, who broadcast, who write, who are all part of the, military industrial cricket complex, if you like. And once you're taking away some of these days, we take them away very blithely and say, well, our cricketers need more time to prepare, even though their workload has been dwindling, as I hope I've demonstrated quite significantly over the last 45, 50 years in a regular downward spiral.
You're a man on a day rate, aren't you, Norcross, eh?
Well, I am. And increasingly, a lot of people are. It's all, it's all right for the chief cricket writer of the Press Association, but it's not all right for Steve
rolling in it
at the Oval. Steve at the Oval, who makes my coffee very diligently and hands out my food. He's on a day rate. That's 8 days he's going to go missing. We're in the middle of a cost of living crisis. I'm not saying for 1 minute that cricket needs to be put on in order to support stewards, but
Mm.
I don't think we should just blithely toss away people's livelihoods like this on the altar of an experiment that we think will enhance cricket at the top level. I mean, frankly, if you're coming back from an injury and there are only 10 games of cricket to be played that season, and you get an injury in the first game and you're out for 4 or 5 games, you've got less cricket to play to get back and prove your worth and get back in the England team. So there is that side of it as well. If there's, as has happened in this country many times before, a period of time when the weather is a bit shitty. I mean, think of 2012 when it basically rained from May through to the end of June. You can wipe out a whole bunch of first-class fixtures and end up with a county championship that is decided on the basis of about 3 matches that ever actually reached a conclusion. And it'll get even worse if they decide they're going to play with a kookaburra ball. We will move on to the rest of these recommendations in the men's high performance review. Oh, it's getting exciting now. I'm starting to get into it.
I told you.
In just a moment. If you love the language of cricket and want more, then head over to 99.94 app and you can hear all of our podcasts and cricket commentary. We're adding new shows all the time and covering cricket series from all over the world. Be the first to hear all our announcements by following us on social media at 9994DM. Welcome to Cricket's Conversation. So, you teased us all, Rory, right at the outset. There we were, wondering, can we really face a gnarled old conversation about the men's high performance review? But you said, wait, there are 17 whole recommendations in there that really aren't that contentious. Run us through some of them. They better be good.
I will have to run you through some of them because some of them have not lingered in my mind longer than the 5 seconds it took me to read them. Some of them are basically quite generic that wouldn't worry about anyone just benchmarking and coaching stuff. But so pitches is a big part of it. Now, we don't want to get into that because we've said before, pitches is a whole different level of shenanigans that we're not qualified to get into. The kookaburra ball, a pilot with the kookaburra ball has been floated, as has happened in the past, and it's happened in the reverse with Australia taking the Dukes.
Yeah.
They want to bring back the North v South fixture as a pre-season curtain raiser. They want to.
I liked that. They play that abroad, would they? I went to
that's the idea.
In Barbados. They were brilliant.
Yeah. So that's an idea, and again, that's with a view to looking at players who aren't necessarily on the England setup, but are on the cusp of it and benchmarking them. They want to bring back an England under-17 team. They want to beef up the Lions program and make it more obviously linked to the Test team. I think at the moment, some days they pick a guy out of nowhere because he's needs a game or needs a trot, or they've bowled a good over on TV. So they're some of the ones, and then central contracts. And it does appear that there's some interest in reviewing central contracts because maybe they're not as nimble as they were when they were brought in. Now, I don't think anyone disagrees that central contracts were a good idea because they got us some very good obvious results. But in sort of, there's a bit of fear and uncertainty about the threat of T20 franchise leagues and money available elsewhere. And they're looking at rebalancing the idea, whether it be multi-year contracts and whether they shift the dial in terms of match fees versus retainers. So some quite dense stuff in there. But a couple of issues to pick out. Kookaburra ball, that's just a bad idea, isn't it?
It's a terrible idea. That mustn't happen. I mean, it doesn't. I think they've tried using it a couple of times over here, and it falls apart. It's wretched. It doesn't do anything. I do genuinely get annoyed by the idea that the only way England are going to win matches abroad is if you force bowlers to bowl on terrible pitches with terrible balls and just make them go through the motions for 4 days while each side racks up 600. I just don't see that isn't necessarily very helpful.
I think making county cricket, first county championship cricket, boring is, and I mean really the cricket right through the middle is, crap ball, flat pitch, let's see who can fashion a result out of a 600 match, is a more is a more drastic problem than lopping a couple of games off the season. I think compromising the stuff that is going on in that 22 yards is much bigger problem. So I don't think that's a great idea. I suppose they're kind of calling it a pilot so that they can review the data and say, okay, what did we learn from that? Not a lot. Maybe we ditch it again. But I think to remove the Dukes, even for a round or 2 rounds, would be to take a strength and turn it into a weakness by taking that away, which is not a good idea. Albeit I would say at the Andrew Strauss press conference, the Sir Andrew Strauss press conference, I should say, at Lord's that I went to discuss this review, he was asked about, there was a long question about the cricket ball, which went off into a detour about the Tiflex experiment.
Oh, yes.
And I wondered if Sir Dave Brailsford and Dan Ashworth, technical director of Newcastle United, who helped Andrew Strauss on this review, I wonder if they got into the weeds of Tiflex and whether they found themselves in a meeting room one day saying, what did I sign up for here?
Yes, I remember the Tiflex ball. We all got very vexed by it, didn't we? It was, for years I thought it was basically plastic, but it turned out it wasn't. So look, we're going to wrap up shortly. What I really want from you, I guess, is of the 17 recommendations that you think are going to go through, they strive. I've cast my eye over a few of them. They don't feel particularly controversial. They do feel like they are the right kind of gambit. I love North-South. I mean, it's a way of creating another kind of elite structure. I think pathways have been slightly lopped off in the last few years, in part because of COVID. I mean, let's be quite clear.
North-South would be great for this podcast, actually, as well. I feel like we could sort of have a head coaching role, surely, between us. I'll take the North, if that's all right.
Yeah, well, I'm South till I die, you know. Even though my mother was from Yorkshire.
Bleed gravy South. Or something.
Yes, I bleed sumac and foie gras. I don't know. I don't know what you imagine goes on down
anyway,
here.
Yeah.
Excuse me. But so I don't think there's anything, you know, it's suck it and see. Some of those ideas could be good. Time will tell. Of the ones that affect domestic cricket, just a job back to that briefly before we go, your view from having talked to county chairs, it strikes me if you need a 2/3 majority, that I can already say to myself, are Leicestershire, Derbyshire, Glamorgan, Sussex, that's 4 just off the top of my head, Northants, Durham, are they really going to be in favour of this? Because the other side of it is, if you're relegated this year, which Gloucestershire will be, and very probably Warwickshire, next year, there's nothing in it. You're playing for nothing. You know, you don't get promoted from the second division next year. You're playing for being seeded, really. And I guess the team that's top of Division 2, the first and second in Division 2, will get a slightly better seeding in their 6-team group. But, you know, there's only 6 sides who are going to be in the first division in 2024 on this basis. So how on earth do they get 12 people to vote for it?
Well, one, I can tell you that Marcus North was on the panel of people who wrote this report. So I reckon Durham might be a win. I think Durham might get a vote, given that their director of cricket sort of chucked a few paragraphs towards it. But I also think they probably don't get to this stage without thinking that they're really quite close. So it will take a little bit of bartering, I'm sure. I can't imagine it gets through unaltered. But if I had to guess, I think maybe they get it over the line with a couple of concessions. And then we go again. But whatever happens, next year is a zombie year, because either the changes don't go ahead and you've got this elite panel of people who've assessed all the data and said that the current structure and the one that we're having next year doesn't work and it's not fit for purpose and it doesn't help anyone. And it is a horrible porridge of uncertainty.
The porridge of uncertainty. That's the name of the episode, by the way, Rory. Don't forget.
Or we agree a review, a change of proposals and a new schedule, and we say, and we're going to do it in 16 months' time. I think the idea that we've got to go through another season like this with the back and forth and the sort of lack of clarity about what format you're playing when you turn up to a ground is regrettable.
I couldn't agree more. It's so enervating, scheduling. It really is. And I don't actually relish that role. Whoever has to do it, it's a bloody nightmare. We are going to be leaving it here. We will be back after, I think we've decided we're going to do it after the England women play their final international match of the summer at Lord's on Saturday, the 24th. There will also have been a couple more T20 games played. One's being played on Friday, the day that we're recording, and another on Sunday. So we're going to get together early next week. We're going to run the rule over where England are in that T20 series. Of course, we did a podcast yesterday and it was all sweetness and light. Well, no spoilers, but it's not sweetness and light right now. And as for the women, well, they're really up against it. So we will be, with no holds barred, looking back at that and any other developments that have squeaked out. Who knows? Maybe from the men's high performance review. I can't wait for the women's high performance review. I'm quivering with the anticipation of a chinchilla on his wedding night. But for now, thank you for listening to England Cricket on 99.94. Cricket every day. Please rate, review, and subscribe. You can download the 99.94 app. Follow us personally on, in my case, at Norcross Cricket. And Rory, your handle.
At the RVD. Let's leave it there. We got to go.
At the RVD. We'll put links up for everything we do there on this podcast and beyond. Also, follow our network at 9994DM on social media. Follow for podcasts and commentary from the bat and ball world. Thanks for joining Cricket's Conversation on 99.94. We speak cricket. Until the next time, from both of us, goodbye.